The ship landed on a moon that had no name. It was a dead place, gray and silent, at the edge of known space. The Confederation survey team stepped out onto the dust and looked around. There was nothing here. Nothing except the massive black stone that rose from the ground. Like a finger pointing at the stars, Ambassador Vrix was the first to approach it. He was tall, with hard-shell skin and eyes that saw in many directions at once. He had lived for 300 years and believed he had seen everything the galaxy could offer. But this stone made him stop. It was covered in writing. Thousands of languages carved deep into the black surface. Some were familiar. Most were not. But as Vrix walked around the monument, he realized something strange. Every message said the same thing. Do not wake what sleeps in the void. Do not harvest the dark stars. We failed. You must not. Vrix made a sound that was his species' way of laughing. Human nonsense, he said to his team. Call the council. Tell them we found another relic of the extinct ones. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. A human monument had been discovered. The Galactic Confederation, which ruled over 800 species and 10,000 worlds, was curious. Humans had vanished 10,000 years ago. They were remembered as a weak species, short-lived and violent. They had destroyed themselves in their endless wars, or so the histories said. Finding their relics was like finding the bones of a forgotten animal. But the writing on the monument was a problem. No one could read the oldest script at the bottom of the stone. It was human, but it was ancient, from before humans had joined the galactic community. The council needed a translator. They found one on a small colony world at the edge of Confederation space. Her name was Una, and she was 26 years old. She had dark hair and serious eyes, and she was one of the few remaining humans in the known galaxy. Her people had survived in small numbers, scattered and forgotten. Living quietly among the greater species, Una had spent her life studying the old human languages. It was all she had left of her ancestors. When the council summoned her, she did not want to go. But she had no choice. The Confederation did not ask. It commanded she arrived at the moon 3 weeks later. Ambassador Vrix met her at the landing site. He looked at her the way one might look at an insect. You are the translator, he said. It was not a question, I am, Una replied. Then translate. We do not have time to waste on dead languages. Una walked to the monument. She placed her hand on the cold black stone and felt something move inside her chest. It was not fear. It was recognition. This stone had been made by her people. Her ancestors had stood here 10,000 years ago, carved these words with their own hands. She read the oldest script slowly, her lips moving without sound. When she finished, her face was pale. Well? Vrix demanded. Una turned to face him. It says the same thing as all the others. But there is more. She pointed to a section of text that was smaller, hidden near the base of the stone. This part is a record. It tells of a war that my ancestors fought long before they reached the stars. They found something in the void. Something that should not exist. They called it the Hollow. The Hollow, Vrix repeated. A children's story. No, Una's voice was firm. It was real. My ancestors fought it for 200 years. Billions died. Entire worlds were destroyed. In the end, they found a way to seal it away. They locked it behind the dark stars at the center of the galaxy. And they left warnings everywhere they could, in every language they knew, so that no one would ever make the same mistake. Vrix stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed again, louder this time. Your ancestors were superstitious fools. The dark stars are a natural phenomenon, nothing more. The Confederation has been studying them for centuries. There is nothing dangerous there. The warning says do not harvest them, Una said. It says the seal requires the stars to remain untouched. The warning says many things. Vrix waved his hand dismissively. The council will decide what to do with this information. Your work here is done. The council met 1 week later. Una was allowed to present her findings, but she could see that no one was listening. The representatives of 800 species sat in their seats and looked at her with boredom or amusement. When she finished speaking, the High Prelate of the Confederation rose to address the assembly. His name was Soroth, and he was the most powerful being in the galaxy. His skin was smooth and wet like a frog, and his eyes were golden. He had ruled the Confederation for 100 years and believed that nothing in the universe could threaten his power. "We have heard the human's translation," Sareth said, "and we have heard her warning. But let us remember what we know of humans. They were a young species. They lived short lives and died easily. They fought among themselves constantly and destroyed their own civilization. Why should we fear the ghosts of such a people?" The assembly laughed. Una stood alone at the center of the chamber, her hands clenched at her sides. "The dark stars contain more energy than we could use in 1,000,000 years, Sarath continued. "We would be fools to ignore such a resource because of ancient superstition. I propose we begin harvesting immediately." The vote was unanimous. The warning was ignored. Una returned to her colony world that night. She found an old man waiting for her at the spaceport. His name was Tay, and he had been a military historian before he retired. His hair was white, and his back was bent, but his eyes were sharp. "They did not listen," he said. "It was not a question. No." Una sat down beside him. They laughed. Tay nodded slowly. "They do not know what humans truly are. They remember us as weak because we let them remember us that way. But the archives tell a different story." He looked up at the stars. "When the Hollow returns, they will learn. And on that day, they will wish they had listened to the warning." Una followed his gaze. Somewhere out there, at the heart of the galaxy, the dark stars waited. And behind them, something ancient and terrible was beginning to stir. "What do we do now?" she asked. Tay smiled, but there was no joy in it. "We prepare, as we have always prepared, as we have prepared for 10,000 years." In the darkness between the stars, the children of humanity began to wake. 3 years passed. The Confederation built its harvesting stations around the dark stars. They were massive structures, larger than moons, designed to drain energy from the collapsed stars at the galaxy's center. It was the greatest engineering project in galactic history. Every species in the Confederation celebrated it as proof of their superiority. Hune did not celebrate. He was a human engineer, one of the few allowed to work on the project. The Confederation needed his skills, but did not respect him. His co-workers called him Short Life and laughed at his warnings. He had tried to tell them that the dark stars were not natural. He had tried to explain that his ancestors had created them as a prison. No one listened. He stood at the window of Harvesting Station 7 and watched the machines do their work. Great beams of light pulled energy from the nearest dark star, feeding it into storage units that would power Confederation worlds for centuries. It was beautiful, in a terrible way. "You look worried, brother." Hyun turned. His sister Mina stood behind him, wearing the uniform of a cargo pilot. She was younger than him by 5 years, with quick eyes and a sharp smile. But she was not smiling now. "They started the deep extraction today," Hyun said. "They are pulling energy from the core of the star itself." "Is that bad?" "The warning said the seal was tied to the stars. If they damage the core," Hyun shook his head. "I do not know what will happen. No one does." Mina moved closer to him. "The elders have been asking about you," she said quietly. "They want to know what you have seen." Jan looked around carefully. They were alone, but he kept his voice low. "Tell them the Confederation is blind. They see only the energy. They do not see the readings I have been hiding." "What readings?" "Something is responding to the extraction. Deep in the void beyond the stars. Energy signatures that should not exist. Something is waking up." Mina's face went pale. "The Hollow. Maybe, I do not know. But whatever it is getting stronger every day." Hyen turned back to the window. "I am going to sabotage the extraction systems tonight. I can delay the project by months, maybe longer." "They will catch you," Mina said. "They will kill you." "I know." Hyen's voice was calm. "But someone has to try. Take my data to the colonies. Show the elders. They need to know how little time we have left." That night, Hyun entered the main control room of Station 7. He had spent months planning this moment, learning the security systems, finding the weaknesses. His hands moved quickly over the controls. Alarms began to sound, but he did not stop. He watched as the extraction beams failed, one by one, and felt something like peace. The guards found him 3 minutes later. They did not ask questions. They did not give him a trial. He was human, and humans did not matter. Hyun was sentenced to public execution. The Confederation decided to make an example of him. High Prelate Soroth himself would oversee the ceremony, which would be broadcast to every world in the galaxy. It would place on the same day as the celebration of the harvesting project's completion. Mina escaped on a cargo ship before they could arrest her, too. She carried her brother's data in a hidden drive pressed against her heart. She flew for 3 weeks through empty space, following paths that only humans knew, until she reached a world that appeared on no Confederation map. The elders were waiting for her. On the day of the celebration, the galaxy watched as High Prelate Soroth stood before a crowd of millions. Behind him, the dark stars glowed with stolen energy. Before him, Hyun knelt in chains, his face bloody, but his eyes unbroken. "Today we celebrate the greatest achievement in galactic history," Soroth announced. His voice echoed across 1,000 worlds. "We have tamed the dark stars. We have proven that there is nothing in this universe that the Confederation cannot conquer." He gestured at Haon. "We have punished the one who tried to stop us. A human, one of the last of a failed species. His ancestors left us warnings of monsters and darkness. They told us to fear the void." Soroth's lips curled in contempt. "But where are the humans now? Extinct. Forgotten. They could not even save themselves. Why should we listen to the ghosts of such a people?" The crowd laughed. Han said nothing. He did not look at Soroth or the crowd. He looked up at the stars, and he smiled. "Kill him," Soroth ordered. The execution beam fired. Hyun died without making a sound. Across the galaxy, in the hidden colonies, the humans watched the broadcast in silence. They saw one of their own die for trying to save a galaxy that hated him. They heard the laughter of species who had never known true war. And something changed inside them, in a chamber deep beneath a nameless moon. An old woman named Sora stood before a machine that had not been activated in 10,000 years. She was the keeper of the last protocol, the final plan that humanity had created for this exact moment. Her ancestors had built it, generation after generation, passing the knowledge down through the ages like a sacred flame. She placed her hand on the activation panel. The machine began to hum. On 100 hidden worlds, forges that had been cold for millennia began to burn. Children who had never known violence were gathered by their parents and taught songs they did not understand. Songs of war. Songs of sacrifice. Songs of a time when humanity had faced the darkness and refused to break. In the great shipyards hidden in the spaces between dimensions, ancient vessels began to stir. Their hulls were black as the void itself, and their weapons were things that the galaxy had never imagined. They had waited for 10,000 years. Now, at last. Their waiting was almost over. Mina stood in the council chamber of the elders and delivered her brother's data. The old men and women studied it in silence. When they were finished, the eldest among them rose to speak. "The seal is breaking," he said. "The hollow will return within the year. Perhaps within months." He looked at the faces around him. "It is time. Send the word to all colonies. Activate the protocols. Begin the preparations." "And the Confederation?" someone asked. "They killed Haon. They laugh at our warnings." The elder's face was hard. "Let them laugh. When the hollow comes, they will beg us for help. And then," he paused, "then they will learn what humanity truly is. They will learn why our ancestors left those warnings. Not because we were weak, but because we knew the price of being strong." In the void, beyond the dark stars, something that had slept for 10,000 years opened its eyes. It felt the energy flowing from the harvesting stations. It felt the seal weakening. And it began to move toward the light. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the age of peace was over. The age of fire was about to begin. The hollow came without warning. One moment, The Confederation's greatest fleet was orbiting Harvesting Station 1. The next moment, the fleet was gone. Not destroyed, gone. Erased from existence. As if it had never been. The thing that emerged from the dark stars was not something the galaxy could understand. It was not a ship, or a creature, or a weapon. It was a hole in reality itself. Where it moved, space twisted and broke. Stars flickered and died. Planets crumbled into dust. In the first day alone, 3 billion lives were erased. High Prelate Sarath received the reports in his command chamber. His golden eyes were wide with fear. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "What is this thing?" His advisors had no answers. They had never seen anything like it. Their weapons passed through it without effect. Their shields meant nothing. The hollow consumed everything it touched, growing larger with each passing hour. "Send more fleets," Sarath ordered. "Send everything we have." Send everything. It was not enough. The Confederation's military, built over thousands of years, was destroyed in a single week. The survivors fled in all directions, screaming warnings that no one could hear. The hollow followed, patient and eternal. Eating worlds like a child eating fruit. On the human colony worlds, the people watched and waited. Admiral Kira stood in her command center, studying the reports with cold eyes. She was 50 years old, with gray in her hair and scars on her hands. She had trained for this moment her entire life, as her mother had trained before her and her grandmother before that. 20 generations of preparation, all leading to this day. "The Confederation is requesting contact," her aide reported. "They are begging for help." "Let them beg a little longer," Kira said. "They need to understand what they have done." In a medical bay on another colony, a young man named Jay was strapped to a table. He was 22 years old, strong and healthy, with the quiet patience of someone who had learned to wait. Around him, machines hummed and clicked, injecting substances into his blood that made his veins glow blue. "The awakening will be painful," the doctor told him. "Your ancestors engineered modifications into our DNA, designed to activate only in times of great need. For 10,000 years, these modifications have been dormant. Now we must wake them." "I understand," Jay said. "I am ready." The pain came like fire through his entire body. Jay screamed, but he did not ask them to stop. He felt something changing inside him, something ancient and powerful rising from the depths of his cells. His eyes, once brown, turned silver. His muscles grew dense and hard. His mind expanded, processing information faster than any computer when it was over. He rose from the table and looked at his hands. They were the same hands he had always had, but they felt different now. Stronger, faster, ready. "What am I?" he asked. "You are what humans were always meant to be," the doctor said. "You are a weapon." Across the colonies, thousands of young humans underwent the same transformation. They were the new generation of warriors, engineered to fight an enemy that existed between dimensions. They could see the Hollow's true form, something that drove other species mad. They could move through twisted space without losing their minds. They were humanity's answer to the darkness. The Confederation finally received its response from the human colonies. It came in the form of a fleet. Ships emerged from hidden dimensional pockets all across the galaxy. Thousands of vessels that had been waiting in secret for 10,000 years. They were black and angular, their surfaces covered in strange symbols that seemed to move and shift. They carried weapons that the Confederation had never imagined. Admiral Kira broadcast her message to the entire galaxy. Her face appeared on every screen, in every system, on every world. "You laughed at our warning," she said. "You called us extinct. You called us weak. You killed our people for trying to save you." Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Now the Hollow has returned exactly as we said it would. And now you come to us, begging for help." She paused, letting the silence stretch across the stars. "We will help you. Not because you deserve it. Not because you were kind to us. We will help you because that is who we are. We are humanity. We have faced the darkness before. We will face it again. The human fleet began its advance toward the hollow. On the surface of a dead world, Una stood beside the priestess Sora, watching the fleet pass overhead. In 3 years, Una had changed. She was no longer just a translator. She had become a leader, a voice for her people. "What is the last protocol?" she asked. "Everyone speaks of it, but no one will tell me what it is." Sora was silent for a long moment. She was very old, her face lined with years and sorrow. "It is our final weapon," she said at last. "A way to seal the hollow permanently. But the cost." She shook her head. "The cost is terrible. Tell me." "The seal requires a human consciousness to power it. Not for a moment. Forever. Whoever activates the protocol will be trapped in endless battle with the hollow for all eternity, holding the door closed with nothing but their will." Sora looked at Una with eyes full of pain. "In the first war, 10,000 humans volunteered. They are still there, Una, still fighting, still holding the line. For 10,000 years, Una felt her heart grow cold. And if the seal is broken completely, if we cannot stop the hollow with our weapons, then someone must volunteer again. Perhaps many someones." Sora turned back to the sky. "This is the truth of humanity, child. This is why we left the warnings. Not because we feared the darkness, but because we knew what it cost to defeat it. We did not want anyone else to pay that price." The first human ships engaged the hollow near a dying star. The battle was terrible beyond words. Ships were torn apart by dimensional storms. Warriors in powered armor fought creatures that existed in 7 dimensions at once. The hollow screamed with a voice that shattered minds, but the human soldiers did not break. They had been prepared for this. They had been born for this. Jay led his squad into the heart of the chaos. He could see the hollow now, truly see it, and it was worse than he had imagined. It was hunger given form, emptiness made real. It hated everything that existed and wanted only to consume. But he was not afraid. Fear was something that belonged to the old humans, the ones who had not been awakened. He was something new, something that could fight. He raised his weapon and fired. The war for the galaxy had begun. The war lasted for 6 months. 6 months of constant battle across 1,000 star systems. 6 months of death and destruction on a scale the galaxy had never known. And in those 6 months, the galaxy learned what humanity truly was. General Wu stood in his command tent on a world called Sanctuary, studying the tactical displays. He was 60 years old, with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too many deaths. He had been a soldier his entire life, training for a war he hoped would never come. Now it was here, and he fought it without mercy. "The hollow is advancing on Sector 7, his aide reported. "Our forces are outnumbered 3 to 1, and we will fight 3 times as hard," Wu said. "Send the reserves. Tell them to hold the line until the evacuations are complete." "Sir, the reserves have been fighting for 18 hours without rest." "I know." Wu's voice was cold. "Tell them to hold anyway." The reserves held. They held for 26 hours, fighting without sleep, without food, without hope. When reinforcements finally arrived, only a quarter of the original force was still alive. But the evacuations were complete. 3 billion civilians had escaped. High Prelate Sorath watched the battle reports from his command ship. He had fled the capital when the hollow came, abandoning his people to save himself. Now he drifted at the edge of known space, watching humans die to protect a galaxy that had mocked them. He did not understand them. He had lived for over 100 years. He had seen species fight and lose, seen them surrender and beg for mercy. But the humans did neither. They fought with a ferocity that seemed almost insane. They threw themselves into impossible battles and refused to retreat. They sang as they died, ancient songs in a language he did not understand. Why did they fight like this? He asked the human liaison assigned to his ship. Her name was Nari, and she was a medic who had been treating Confederation wounded. Nari looked at him with tired eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. Her uniform was covered in blood, most of it not her own. Because we have fought this enemy before, she said. 10,000 years ago, we faced the Hollow, and we won. But the cost was terrible. We lost everything. Our worlds. Our people. Our future. We do not want anyone else to pay that price. But you hate us, Soroth said. We laughed at your warnings. We killed your people. Yes. Nari's voice was flat. We hate you. But that does not mean we will let you die. That is not who we are. She turned and walked away, back to the medical bay. Back to the wounded Confederation soldiers, who looked at her with confusion and shame. They had mocked humans their entire lives. Now, humans were saving them. On a distant battlefield, the scientist Day completed his greatest creation. He called it the Scar Bomb. It was a weapon that tore holes in reality itself, creating wounds that even the Hollow could not heal. He had worked for 3 months without rest, driven by the memory of his wife and children who had died in the Hollow's first attack. Will it work? Admiral Kira asked, examining the weapon. I do not know, Day admitted. The theory is sound, but we have never tested it against the Hollow directly. Then we test it now. The first Scar Bomb was deployed in the Battle of the Endless Dark. The explosion was silent, invisible to normal eyes. But to those who had been awakened, it was beautiful and terrible. Reality itself ripped open, and the Hollow screamed. For the first time, the enemy retreated. The galaxy celebrated. They thought the war was won. They did not understand that the Hollow could not be killed, only contained. And they did not know the price that would be. Required to contain it, General Wu launched his ground campaign on a world called Last Stand. It was the final defensive position before the Hollow would reach the galactic core. If they lost this world, everything would be lost. His soldiers landed in the middle of a nightmare. The Hollow had twisted the planet, turning it into a maze of broken dimensions and impossible geometry. Normal soldiers would have gone mad within minutes. But the human warriors had been prepared. They moved through the chaos with cold efficiency, killing creatures that should not exist. Closing rifts that threatened to swallow the world. High Prelate. Soroth watched from orbit as a single human battalion held a mountain pass against 10,000 Hollow creatures. They fought for 17 hours without relief. They sang as they fought, old war hymns that had been passed down for generations. One by one, they fell. One by one, they died. But they never retreated. They never broke. When reinforcements finally arrived, only 12 soldiers remained alive. They stood among the bodies of their brothers and sisters, covered in blood and shadow, and they did not weep. They simply reloaded their weapons and prepared to fight again. Soroth felt something change inside him. He had lived for over 100 years, and he had never felt shame until this moment. These creatures that he had mocked, these short-lived humans that he had called primitive and weak, were dying to protect his people. And they were not dying because they had to. They were dying because they chose to. Why? He whispered to himself. Why do they sacrifice so much for those who hate them? Nari appeared beside him. She had heard his question. Because our ancestors understood something that your people never did, she said. True strength is not about power. It is not about conquest. True strength is about sacrifice. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves, even when they do not deserve it. She looked out at the battlefield, at the human soldiers fighting and dying below. We left the warnings because we loved this galaxy, even though the galaxy never loved us back. We wanted to spare you the horror of what we experienced. We wanted to give you a chance to live in peace. Her voice hardened. You wasted that chance. But we will not let you pay for that mistake with extinction. Orth bowed his head. For the first time in his long life, he had no words. The Battle of Last Stand continued for 3 more days. When it was over, the Hollow had been pushed back. But the victory was temporary. Everyone knew that the enemy would return. Everyone knew that this war could only end one way. Admiral Kira called a meeting of all human commanders. They gathered in a chamber deep beneath the surface of Last Stand, surrounded by the graves of their fallen comrades. The Scar Bombs are working, she said, but they are not enough. The Hollow is infinite. We can wound it, but we cannot kill it. The only way to end this war is to activate the last protocol and seal the enemy away forever." The room was silent. Everyone knew what the last protocol meant. Everyone knew the sacrifice it required. "I will do it," Jay said, stepping forward. His silver eyes were calm. "I am young and strong. I can hold the seal longer than anyone else." "You will be trapped for eternity," Kira said, "fighting alone in the darkness." "I know." Jay smiled, and there was peace in his face. "But I am not afraid. This is what I was born for. This is what all of us were born for." Others stepped forward to join him. Thousands of volunteers, all ready to sacrifice themselves for a galaxy that had never loved them. Yuna watched from the back of the room, tears streaming down her face. This was the price of being human. This was the burden they had carried for 10,000 years. And now, at last, it was time to pay it again. The final battle began at the heart of the galaxy. Admiral Kira led the human fleet toward the dark stars where the Hollow had made its home. Behind her came every ship that humanity possessed. Thousands of vessels carrying the last hope of the galaxy. Around them, the surviving Confederation fleets followed at a distance, watching and waiting. They had no weapons that could hurt the Hollow. All they could do was witness. Yuna stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the dark stars grow larger on the screen. Beside her stood Jay, who would be one of the first to enter the seal. He was calm, almost peaceful, as if he had made his peace with what was coming. "Are you afraid?" Yuna asked him. "No," Jay said. "I used to think that death was the worst thing that could happen, but now I understand. There are things worse than death, and there are things worth dying for." He turned to look at her. "Will you remember me? When this is over?" Yuna took his hand. "We will never forget you. Any of you. Your names will be written in the stars. Your sacrifice will be remembered for as long as humanity exists." Jay smiled. "Then I am content." The battle began. The Hollow rose to meet them, a tide of darkness that blotted out the stars. It was vast beyond comprehension, a hole in reality that stretched across light years. Where it touched the human ships, they burned. Where it touched the stars, they died. It was hunger and hatred given form, and it wanted nothing more than to consume everything that existed. But the humans did not run. They flew straight into the darkness, firing their weapons, launching their scar bombs, tearing holes in the enemy's infinite body. Ships exploded around them. Friends and family died in the cold void of space. But they did not stop. Kira's voice echoed across the fleet. "This is Admiral Kira, to all human vessels. Today, we fight for more than ourselves. We fight for every species that laughed at our warnings. We fight for every world that will never know what we sacrificed. We fight for the future." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was fierce. "You laughed at our warning. Remember this, instead. We could have let you burn. We chose to save you. Do not make us regret it." The flagship broke through the outer edge of the Hollow, diving deep into the darkness where the seal waited. The priestess Sora stood at the control panel of the ancient machine, her hands steady despite her age. Around her, the first volunteers prepared to enter the seal. "The machine is ready," Sora announced. "When I activate it, you will be pulled into the dimensional anchor. Your consciousness will power the seal. Your will is the only thing that will hold the Hollow back." She looked at the young faces around her. "You will fight alone in the darkness for eternity. There will be no rest, no relief. Only endless battle. Understand?" Jay said. "We are ready." One by one, the volunteers stepped forward. They were young and old, men and women, soldiers and civilians. Some were crying. Some were praying. But none of them hesitated. They placed their hands on the machine and closed their eyes. Sora activated the seal. The effect was immediate. Light exploded from the machine, brilliant white light that pierced the darkness of the Hollow. The volunteers screamed as their bodies dissolved. Their consciousness pulled into the dimensional anchor. joining the 10,000 humans who had held the seal for millennia. Outside, the hollow began to shrink. It fought against the seal, raging and screaming, but it could not escape. The human consciousness was stronger. 10,000 years of preparation, 10,000 years of sacrifice, all focused on this single moment. Admiral Kira watched from the bridge as the darkness retreated. Her fleet was broken. More than half her ships were destroyed. But they had one. All vessels fall back, she ordered. The seal is holding. The hollow is contained. The surviving ships limped away from the dark stars, leaving behind the bodies of their comrades, the wreckage of their fleet, and the eternal prison of the hollow. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy tried to rebuild. The Confederation had been shattered. Its fleets were gone, its leaders discredited, its people traumatized. High Prelate Sorath resigned in shame, retreating to a quiet world where he spent his remaining days studying human history. Trying to understand the species he had so terribly misjudged, a new galactic council was formed. For the first time in history, humans sat at the head of the table. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as guardians. The other species looked at them with a mixture of fear and respect. They had seen what humanity could do. They had seen the price humanity was willing to pay. Yuna became the first human ambassador to the new council. She stood before the assembled representatives and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. "We did not fight this war for glory," she said. "We did not fight for power or revenge. We fought because it was right. We fought because someone had to." She looked around the chamber, at the faces of species who had mocked her people, who had called them weak and primitive. 10,000 years ago, we left a warning. You ignored it. You laughed at us. And when the darkness came, you begged us for help. She paused, letting the silence stretch. We helped you. We will always help you, because that is who we are. But do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not mistake our mercy for foolishness. We have shown you what we are capable of. We have shown you the price we are willing to pay. Remember this day. Remember what it cost, and never, ever ignore our warnings again. On a small colony world, far from the center of power, the old historian Tay sat in his study and wrote the final entry in humanity's archive. He was very old now, his hands shaking as he held the pen, but his mind was clear. They ridiculed our warning, he wrote. They learned our power. But what they will never understand is this. Our greatest strength was never our weapons or our fury. It was our refusal to let others suffer what we suffered, even those who mocked us, especially them. He paused, looking out the window at the stars. We are humanity. We are the guardians of the galaxy. We carry the burden of eternity on our shoulders, and we will never stop fighting. Not for ourselves, but for everyone. For the future. For hope. He put down his pen and closed his eyes. Outside, the stars burned bright in the endless night. And somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, the human souls who powered the seal continued their eternal vigil. They fought without rest, without hope of relief, holding back the hollow with nothing but their will. They were the price of salvation, and humanity would never forget them. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy rebuilt. Species that had once been enemies became allies. The scars of the Hollow War slowly healed, but on every human world, once a year, the people gathered to remember. They lit candles in the darkness. They sang the old songs, and they spoke the names of those who had sacrificed everything so that others might live the galaxy had ridiculed. The ancient human warning. The galaxy had realized humanity's power too late, but in the end, it was not power that defined humanity. It was love. Love for life. Love for the future. Love for a galaxy that had never loved them back, and that love burned brighter than any star.